Tragic death. Poisoned. Conspire to use Holden. Y&R star Nate drops. It will shock everyone. The luxurious mansion overlooking Genoa City was once a symbol of wealth, power, and family. But tonight, it was nothing more than a place of ominous silence. Inside, the warm golden lights of chandeliers flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. The atmosphere felt suffocating, charged with secrets and betrayal. Nate Hastings, a well-respected doctor and star of Genoa City, sat in the grand living room, his face tight with tension. The weight of the world had been on his shoulders for weeks, and tonight, it felt heavier than ever. His mind raced with the unsettling feeling that something terrible was about to happen, but he couldn't place what it was. He rubbed his temples as he reflected on the events that had brought him here. Just hours ago, his aunt, Olivia, had called him, her voice thick with urgency. She warned him about a conspiracy brewing in Genoa City, a deadly game involving the most powerful players in town. Olivia had received a cryptic message warning of a tragedy, one that would shake the very foundations of their world. But she hadn't been able to decipher it in time. Nate knew that time was running out. As he sat there in the darkened room, the door opened, and a figure stepped inside. It was Holden, the enigmatic businessman who had recently come to town. Holden's reputation had been built on manipulations and power plays, but Nate had never expected him to become a threat to his own family. Nate, Holden's voice was calm, but there was something calculating behind his words. I hope I'm not disturbing you. We need to talk. Nate stood slowly, his posture guarded. About what, Holden? What do you want? Holden stepped closer, his face a mask of sincerity. You've been acting strange lately. You know that I'm here to help, don't you? I know you're struggling with your family's past, but we need to think about the future now. Nate narrowed his eyes. He had never fully trusted Holden, but the man was persistent. He had a way of making people feel indebted to him, of getting under their skin in a way that was both disarming and dangerous. Holden continued, you can't carry the weight of your family's mistakes forever. Let me help you. Let me give you the leverage you need to finally break free of the chains that bind you. Nate shook his head, his heart pounding in his chest. There was something about Holden's words that rang false, like a well-rehearsed script. He had heard them before, promises of freedom, of power, all at a price. I'm not interested in your games, Holden, Nate said firmly. I'm here to save lives, not play political chess. Holden smirked, his eyes glinting with amusement. You think you're above this, don't you? But we all have our breaking points. Trust me, you'll come around. As Holden turned to leave, Nate's phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a text message from Olivia, and Nate's stomach twisted as he read it. Nate, be careful. I've uncovered something terrible. Someone in our circle is poisoning those closest to you. It's already begun. You need to protect yourself, your family, and your future. The hairs on the back of Nate's neck stood up. Poison. The word echoed in his mind as a chill ran down his spine. Holden's parting words lingered in the air. Remember, Nate, you're not in control anymore. It was a week before the tragic event that would rock Genoa City to its core. Nate was struggling to understand the cryptic warning from Olivia. He had questioned everyone around him, including his closest friends and family members. Who could have possibly done something so vile? The idea of poison being used against him, against his loved ones, seemed too far-fetched. Yet, with every passing day, it became more undeniable. Nate reached out to his old colleague at the hospital, Dr. Ben Carter, a forensic pathologist who had seen his fair share of criminal activity. Ben was always one for keeping things professional, but Nate could hear the concern in his voice when he explained the situation. Poisoning, Ben had said, his tone grim. It's a rare and dangerous method. The symptoms can be mistaken for natural causes or something less sinister. But once it takes hold, it's unstoppable. Who's the target? I don't know, Nate had replied, pacing the length of his office. I think it's me, but I'm not sure why. Ben's voice dropped lower. Be careful, Nate. If someone is trying to take you down, they won't stop at just you. They'll go after anyone close to you. The words haunted Nate as he spent the next few days investigating the people around him. He couldn't shake the feeling that Holden was behind it all, that the businessman had somehow orchestrated this entire mess. But how? What was Holden's ultimate goal? Nate was determined to find out. As he dug deeper into Holden's past, he found disturbing connections that pointed to a dark undercurrent of deceit. Holden had been involved in corporate takeovers, financial manipulations, and even threats to those who stood in his way. But poison, was that really something Holden would resort to? Then, an unexpected breakthrough. Nate received a confidential document, an anonymous letter slipped under his door late one night. The letter was a shocking revelation. It detailed a web of conspiracies involving some of Genoa City's most influential families, including his own. It was clear now. Someone was using Holden as a pawn in their grand scheme. And Nate was the target. The poison had taken its toll faster than anyone could have anticipated. Nate had been feeling unwell for days, chalking it up to stress and exhaustion. But when he collapsed at the hospital, his body racked with pain, he knew something far more sinister was at play. The doctors were baffled. Blood tests showed high levels of toxins in his system, and his condition deteriorated rapidly. As Nate slipped in and out of consciousness, his thoughts were clouded with one haunting question: who could want him dead? Through the haze of pain, Nate's mind flashed back to the conversation with Holden. The words echoed in his ears, "You'll come around." But it wasn't just Holden who had come to mind. He thought of his family, his colleagues, and even his friends. Was one of them behind this plot? Was someone close to him willing to betray him for power or money? A shocking confession, delivered by none other than his cousin, Devin Hamilton, shook Nate to his core. "Nate," Devin said, his voice trembling. "I'm so sorry, but I didn't know what to do. They said they'd hurt you. They said they'd make it worse for our family if I didn't help them. I never meant for this to happen." Nate looked at his cousin in disbelief, the realization hitting him like a freight train. The conspiracy had been much deeper than he'd ever imagined, and the ones he trusted the most were involved. Holden had been only a small piece in the puzzle. Devin continued, his eyes filled with guilt. "It was supposed to be simple. Just a small dose, enough to make you weak, not enough to kill you. But they miscalculated." Nate's heart sank as he realized the full scope of the plan. Someone had been manipulating Devin, and everyone else in his life, from the shadows. It was the kind of betrayal that broke the spirit and shattered trust beyond repair. The days after Nate's collapse were a blur of hospital visits, police interrogations, and frantic searches for answers. But as the pieces of the puzzle slowly began to fall into place, one name continued to rise to the surface: Holden. Nate had thought Holden was merely a puppet in a much larger game. But as the investigation continued, it became clear that Holden was far more than just a player. He was the mastermind. Holden had used everyone around him, including Nate's own family, to execute his plan, a plan that would have left Genoa City under his control. And the poison, it was just the first step in a much larger scheme to eliminate those who stood in his way. The final confrontation came in the most unexpected of places, a quiet room at the hospital where Nate was recovering. Holden entered, his smile cold and calculated, and Nate knew immediately what was about to happen. "You're still breathing," Holden said, his voice dripping with disdain. "I didn't expect that." Nate looked at him with unwavering defiance. "You underestimated me, Holden. And you underestimated the people who care about me." In that moment, Holden's facade cracked. He took a step forward, his eyes dark with rage. "You think you've won. You think you can stop me. I've already won." Nate, though weakened by the poison, gathered every ounce of strength within him. Not yet. Genoa City would never be the same. The shocking revelations about Holden's conspiracy left the town reeling. But as the dust settled, Nate knew one thing for certain: the battle was far from over. The fight for his family's future had only just begun.